Yorkshire puddings. Yorkshire puddings weren't so great yesterday, were they, Harry? They look like big tits. Never mind. Hi, yeah, we're up again. Puddleduck construction. Haven't finished that yet. Just hang on a minute. That's lovely. Alright, can you remember last time? Well, time before last, we had a little bit of a problem with the focusing of the camera, and the last time we did say that we thought we might have fixed it because we found the knob on the back of the camera. The problem was that we have a teenage son, and he's the like the camera operator. The problem is with teenage lads is that once they find the knob, they can't stop playing with it. Once they find out what it does, they can't let it alone. And as you saw last week, it was in and out like a fiddler's elbow. So I think we've come up with a solution, haven't we, Harry, to stop him fiddling with the knob. What's the solution, huh?
What, this?
There's the solution. That will stop the little bugger in his tracks. Right. Where you go, we'll carry on with the Puddleduck. Right, what have we done since you've been away? Right, we've done a bit of wing work. We've done a bit of the work on the end of the. Can you see this, Harry? Yeah, we've done. Yeah, what we've done is we've blocked out the ends of the wings, the wing tips, so that when we fit them on there, like so, we can. Well, in actual fact, I'll take the bulk of that off before I actually glue it on. But that will be epoxied on. So those have been stuck on. These are just old blocks of wood, that's all. Grain going in this direction, so it's sort of easy to sand off. Okay, but that won't go on until I've got the top sheeting on and everything else. Right, that's that done. There's a photograph which Harry will put up of the gluing of the bottom wing sheeting on the second half. You'll notice that I've used a lot of clothes pegs on that one. I mean, usually I would like to use these little clampy things here, but they're really quite brutal, strong, too strong for gluing the thin balsa. It just makes big marks in it and big dents in it. So clothes pegs are quite good. So we put on a load of glue onto the leading edge, formed up the covering, the balsa cover, and put a load of clothes pegs in as per the photo. Apart from that, we've put in the top, not enough room in here. We've put in the top dihedral braces here. Okay, so two dihedral braces, one each side. Epoxied those in, making sure that when the centre section is flat on the bench, the dihedral is exactly the same each side before I glued that in. But it should be anyway, because we've already glued the bottom one in. It hadn't moved, so it was fine. We've glued on the trailing edges, so we've got two top and bottom covering for the trailing edge. We have yet to put on the rear section of the trailing edge, which I'm wondering about. I've cut the wood up to do that, but this covering is very thin, and we've only got 2 sheets of that thick where it joins on the end of the wing. So we're already quite thin for a trailing edge, and I'm a bit worried if it's any thinner it's going to be a bit wobbly, it might snap off. So I'll see what I can do. I've made up a strip which is equal to the thickness of 2 of these. I shall glue that on the end of the trailing edge and sand it off to a round corner at the back of the trailing edge. One of the other things that I've been doing is putting the hinges. I like to skip back and from. No, backwards and forwards. That's it. From bits to other bits, so that I don't get too bored. Building a wing like that, if you just keep going, just drives me around the bend a bit. So what I've done is some of the hinges. So as you can see, the fin and the rudder is there with the hinges in here. These are not glued in, okay, so those 2 will go into the fin, fit into the fin, and this bit fits into the this hinge will fit into the rear fuselage, rear of the fuselage. Okay, now the way I cut the hinges, as you can see, I cut them now before they're covered. I don't glue the hinges in until after the covering is on, and I generally use an epoxy for that, and I'll also pin the hinges with a cocktail stick afterwards. So the slots which you see in the fin here, first off, what I'll do is I'll throw my pencil on the floor, is I'll get a very thin craft knife, okay, and initially make the slot where I want the hinge to fit. After that's done, I will then go to a bigger knife, depending upon the size of the hinge, the width of the hinge. I will then put this down in the slot to open it up a bit. After I've done that, only after I've done that will I use my hinge slotting tool. Okay, I find it easier to start it off with the knives. I'll then put the hinge slotting tool down the crack that I've made, work that down, and then when you buy the hinge slotting tools, you've got a little kind of a hooky thing which you put down there and hook out all the garbage that's still in the slot until the hinge slides in to the slot. Okay, as I say, they're not glued. Now what I like to do, depending upon the type of hinge you use, really, I used 2 sorts of hinges on this because that's what I got. Didn't have enough of one single type, so I've used 2. These are metal pinned hinges on here. Okay, so I will make the slot slightly wider, slightly thicker, in other words. It's not a really hard push fit in this. You've got to allow enough room for the glue. These aren't super glue type hinges. These are some kind of plastic. I don't know. Anyway, they're metal hinged, metal pinned. They slot in there, quite easy push. After you've put your covering on, you know exactly where the hinges are because you've marked it on the drawing, or it's marked on the drawing beforehand. You can then go in, just slot your covering to enable you to push the hinge through the covering. But before you push the hinge in, what I tend to do is I put an epoxy on a cocktail stick, a pointy cocktail stick, down the hinge slot and then push the hinge in until it's in as far as I want it, basically. Okay. Now sometimes I put a bit of grease on the hinge, sometimes I don't, depends. The other type of hinge which I've used on this model is the one piece plastic type hinges. Again, fitted in exactly the same way. These are a bit wider on here, but fitted in exactly the same way. Same tools, do exactly the same thing. After you've covered it, then slot covering and put the hinges. Right, there's a number of things yet to do, as I said. The top covering, I'll bring over and show you. Oh, right, there's two pieces there which I've glued together. Okay, these are super glued, so that's 3 inches, centre piece 6 inches, and that's the length of the wing. Okay, we've yet to cut the semicircular type of shape out, which is shown on the drawing, but after we've done that, we'll glue that, and I'll probably use the aliphatic resin for that, because you can't really super glue it because it's underneath, you can't see it, you won't be able to get to it. We'll use the aliphatic resin on the ribs. The important thing again is to ensure that you leave a little bit of space on the main spars, at the trailing edge of the main spars, only about 1/16 of an inch, so that when you fit the capping strips on, they've got a flat surface, bigger flat surface to glue to, rather than just the top sides of the ribs. I have decided to put capping strips on the bottom of these as well. A couple of reasons there. One, the covering will glue that much better, and two, it will be stronger, because what we're looking at is the rib with a capping strip top and bottom. It's a bit like a metal I-beam, and it will improve the strength considerably. The wing still is a little bit bendy. I've put in all the what do they call it? I can't remember what they're called now.
Spars? I know the wing reinforcer thing.
Yeah, oh, Jesus. Hang on a minute. I've put in all the webs. Yeah, all the shear webs. Talk about a bloody memory. Right, I've put in all the shear webs now. Okay, these centre shear webs, which I was waiting to put on until I waited until I'd obviously put the dihedral braces in. I'll glue top and bottom to the dihedral braces, and side are glued to the wing ribs. So it should stiffen up a bit. Eventually. I think when I've got the wing tips on, it'll stop it from wobbling around a bit. Right, well, we've got all the mechanicals to sort out yet, all the hardware. Okay, so we'll perhaps have a look at the hardware next time. Motor, speed controllers, connectors, batteries, propellers, receivers, and also we'll go through a little bit of covering. I'm sure you don't want to stand there watching me do covering, but I will show you on a small piece of material, a small bit of here, how I go around and do the covering. It's going to be covered with Solartex, because that's what I've got lots of at the moment. I like it anyway, it's nice and sort of satiny rather than glossy. and it's a doggle to put on. It's fantastic stuff to put on. It's a linen rather than a kind of a plasticky stuff. So we'll meet again. Don't know where. Don't know. Yeah, I do. It'll probably be here. So
Follow that downstairs.
I could be downstairs. Could be up in our new playroom in the other one, on the mezzanine floor. Yeah, you may notice that I'm not actually all that quick at building. It's because I'm not all that quick really, and also this time of the year we've got a lot of other stuff to do. We've got getting on for I don't know, 3/4 of an acre here, I think, and it needs cutting and mowing and digging and planting, and because I'm a bit of a grow your own veg nut, so there's lots of other stuff to do, but we'll try and fit in as much as we possibly can. And the weather's a bit iffy at the moment, so I'll stick myself up here and glue a few bits together. Alright, till next time. Bye bye. Right, rolling.
Yeah.
Right, it's tomorrow today, because yesterday we did the filming of the wing, and I forgot a couple of important bits which I need to tell you about before we sign off this particular section. So if we can have a look at the wing, the top sheeting of the wing, as you can see, I've done the left hand half, which is the right hand half looking at here, and now I'm onto here, and there's a couple of important bits just to go through. Firstly,
Wasp.
yeah. Okay. Right, as you can see, that the top sheeting is made up of 3 4-inch sections, super glued together. I've cut them the longest piece to length, and the other bits have got the form already cut on them. Now it's important that this is glued down properly, obviously, onto the wing ribs, which does create a slight, not a problem, but something you have to think about. Right, first off, what I decided to do was decide where my datum, was going to be, which is this side. That's the trailing edge of the front sheeting. Okay, now this line here I've not glued it, I've pinned it onto the main rib. Okay, right, pinned it onto the main rib, and the trailing edge of it I've cut so it fits neatly and squarely up to the trailing edge, which is glued to the end of the wing ribs. Right, what I will do next is, if you come down a bit, Harry, here on the false leading edge, I will run a bead of glue all the way along there, and I will use aliphatic resin. When that glue is on there, I will then bend this down and pin it onto there in 3 places so it doesn't move. The next job, after that's pinned down, I'll just temporarily pin it just to show you. Okay, so that's now touching the glued section. Okay, I will then take off the pins off the back edge of that sheeting to allow it to rise, and then I can push this down onto the false leading edge and glue it properly without it wanting to spring up. After that glue is set, because this is fairly thin sheeting, I can run bleeds of glue underneath, on top of the ribs, and then pin it back, knowing that it's going to be pinned back in exactly the same position as I wanted it, and everything will fit. The other thing that we've got to look at, of course, is the fit of this centre section. Let me just switch the light on so perhaps we can see it a bit better. Where it fits onto the wing ribs. Now, because the end rib of the wing is at an angle, when you tilt it, the rib, because it is round on the top, it's curved, it forms a kind of an elliptical joint, which is quite difficult to cut because you can't really mark it out. So you've got a choice. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this down. As you can see, this side we're on one rib, in the centre we're on 1.5 ribs, and then at the bottom we're on a single rib again. Okay, so I will cut 3 separate sections of 1/16 ply, 1/16 balsa, cover the top, all different sizes. I'll measure them off as I go, because this dimension here is not the same as that dimension there, and is not the same as that dimension at the end either. So that will be a bit of a guess. Measure, cut, and then sand off to fit, to cover the centre section. Right, that's about as far as the little odd bit goes. Right, we'll carry on. I'll glue this tonight, leave it to set, which is what I tend to do with my life, wait for glue to dry, and we'll carry on. I'll show you the finished object on the next video. Okay, cheers.